We start our story about 3 days ago, where a poor, wrongfully convicted man complains of his troublesome ex-wife and husband. Am I the a-hole for telling my ex-wife and her husband to stop being inappropriate at our son's graduation party? I, a 48 male, do not have a great relationship with my ex-wife, who's 42, though I do my best to keep it courteous for our son, 18 male, sake. They have done everything to alienate me from my own child, and have succeeded, with their wealth and connections, to the point where I had no recourse in the courts. My son would say several hurtful things that his mother clearly coached him to say on the rare occasions I got to speak with him. He had a belated graduation party with his stepsister, also 18, this past weekend, and when I arrived, my ex-wife and her husband, who's 37, tried to make me feel unwelcome, though several members of my side of the family were there. I wasn't allowed near my son at all, not even a single photo, and did not get to speak with him. It seemed her entire family coordinated an effort to keep me away from my son the entire time. At this party, my ex-wife was wearing a very inappropriate dress. Her entire bare back was exposed. I noticed that her husband was often caressing her lower back quite intimately. I felt disgusted that they were doing this at my son's graduation party. He kissed her several times as well throughout the night. When I was finally fed up, I walked over to them and firmly told them to stop with the public displays of affection. It was our son's special moment, and their behavior was attention-seeking and disrespectful. So yes, you can already tell that this man is clearly, possibly, mentally insane.
Oh no, two people in a relationship are behaving like they're in a relationship.
In case it isn't clear yet, you're gonna later find out that this man is full of Schmidt. My ex-wife threatened to kick me out. I told her it was not her place. Reminder, it's literally their house. She can do that. And her husband said, "I'm his father, not you," and stood up as if to start a physical altercation. My son saw what was happening and came over. He told me to leave and keep the peace. I left without any fuss. Now, my sister, my son's aunt, said I completely embarrassed her and our other family members at the party. My family is split. My mother, however, is on my side. Thanks, Mummy. So the thing I love to just want to quickly point out, you told her it was not her place? Mate, it's literally their house the graduation party is at. I think it's very much her place to tell you to leave. Now, you may be wondering, Jack, why are you being so harsh on this guy? He's clearly being bullied by this other side of the family. And that's where this other unlikely Am I the A-hole story actually relates. See, it turns out the son themselves actually made a story a month ago, which gives an entirely different spin on this innocent biological father. I, 18 male, am graduating next week. Graduates are allowed to bring 3 guests, so I'm bringing my mom, dad, and my boyfriend. My sister is also graduating, and she's bringing her 2 friends from camp. My bio dad, Ted, found out about the graduation and asked me for a ticket for him and his wife. I told Ted that there were no tickets. He found out about the extra ticket, and he called me and begged to come to his only kid's graduation. I refused and said I wouldn't find another ticket for his wife either. I told him he was not my dad, and if he tried to come to my graduation, I'd get him kicked out. See, I don't think of Ted as my dad. My dad, technically my stepdad, Jason, is my dad. When my mom was pregnant with me, Ted got his dream job in a different state across the country and told my mom he had to take it. My mom couldn't come. He left us anyways, and she gave birth alone. A few months later, he asked her for a divorce because he found someone else. When I was in pre-kindergarten, I met Madison, and we became best friends. Her mom had left her as a baby too. Long story short, my mom fell in love with her dad, and they got married when we were 7. As far as I'm concerned, they're my real family, and Ted's a stranger who shares my DNA. Now Ted's family is blowing up my phone, calling me spoiled, and my mom a parental alienation, and said I was being disrespectful to Ted. His wife called, and I told her to frick off too. Am I the a-hole? Now, normally it's quite understandable to suspect that the mother may have construed the story a little to justify her own projected anger towards this man. But we do have to note that the dad did seem to hide any of this sort of history he's had in his own story. Biggest support thinks that the son is not the a-hole. It's a day about your achievement. If you do not feel he helped you get there, that says a lot about his parenting. If you used your 3 tickets, he is certainly not entitled to your sister's tickets. And the most fascinating thing about this too is that the son eventually came across the story of the bio father, which gives us a little bit more insight into this whole little tea we're about to experience. It's exactly as moronic, self-pitying, and narcissistic as I expected him to be. If it wasn't my actual bio dad, Ted, I'd have thought it was a troll. Ted literally thinks my mum and my dad conspired to keep me away from him for 18 years. Ever wonder why I don't want to be around you? Maybe it's because I don't want to be near an a-hole who abandoned his pregnant wife for a bullshit dream job living on minimum wage in a cabin for 3 years. Maybe it's because you left my mom for another woman while she was raising me as a single mom and you were out living your dream. Maybe it's because you called once a month, if that. Maybe it's because you haven't paid a single cent of child support. Or maybe it's because my dad stepped up to raise me. I know you frickin' hate my dad, Ted. He's a better man than you are, and my mom and I are so lucky to have him. He's my real dad. And it's not just because he adopted me after you signed your rights away. It's because he was the dad I needed even when Mum and him weren't dating. I want you to know that I wanted him to be my dad since I was 4 years old. Or maybe it's because Mum and I have the picture-perfect family that you wanted with your wife that you hate because she's infertile and isn't 21 anymore. A mum, a dad, a son, and a daughter, happily living together as a family. You had me and Mum, and you left us for a higher calling and are mad that we didn't come crawling to you. You were never part of my family, Ted. My accomplishments aren't yours to claim. You did nothing to earn this graduation. We graduated at the top 5% of our class because Mum tutored us. We got into good colleges because Dad took us to our clubs and games and meetings and tournaments and everything you called frou-frou nonsense. He was our mentor for robotics. Did you know that? No, because you don't care what I like. It's us, by the way, because I have a sister that you tried to ignore, because it was okay for you, a 30-year-old man, to abandon his wife and child, but it's unacceptable that a teenage boy stepped up to raise his daughter as a single dad. So clearly not that vindictive against his father. Overall, a fun experience and exposing some people's absolute BS on this internet. Let's move on to someone who equally thinks they're completely innocent when they're totally not. The title sounds all well and good until you learn their tactics to achieve less of a party environment. I, 28-year-old female, live with my boyfriend, who's 27 male. I moved in with him about 8 months ago. I have disabilities and sensory issues. This is important. In general, he is respectful of the accommodations I need. My boyfriend is a professional sculptor and has his studio in our house. It's in a place I have to walk through to get to the bathroom and yard, and there's not another good place in the house for it. The problem is that I'm constantly affected by the way my boyfriend acts while he's working. He listens to music while he works, on his headphones, and is always rocking out with his body motions, mouthing the song lyrics, etc. He says it helps him work, and I understand this. But the main conflict for me is the constant dancing and mouthing lyrics, which he says shouldn't matter because it's silent. I tried to explain to him that with my sensory issues, that's just the same as if I can hear the music. He said I could just enter that part of the house less while he's working. What? The bathroom is there. There are also problems with him bringing buyers over to see his work, and we have policies around this. I need to be notified in advance and agree, which get broken. I've come home, and there is a buyer in the house, and he thought it was fine because he didn't expect me home. Having a stranger in the house is very unsafe for me. I might be affected for days. He, again, suggested that I should just avoid his studio in that case, despite this being my home now, too. I was having an extremely bad day yesterday, week, really, and I just needed restorative peace in my own house, so I hid the key to his studio. I told him I would give it back in an hour and just needed total rest for now, and said to him, like he said to me so many times, that maybe he should spend the time in another part of the house. I really would have given the key back in an hour or so, but he freaked out and bluffed that I was going to make him lose a commission if he couldn't work right then, which gave me an anxiety attack. This is where I might be the a-hole. I didn't return the keys until that night. He thinks I'm the a-hole, but I think for the most part, I just wanted a little peace in my own home. Am I the a-hole? So it's clear to see this person has some things that really affect their comfort in life in general. Some comments actually argue whether or not this is a valid form of disability versus someone being super picky. Take that as you will. I feel like there's many cases of people with disabilities where sensory issues are a genuine thing. In regards to someone mouthing and just dancing around though in another space, I feel like you're kind of pushing the leeway you get with your disability privileges, if that's a thing. So across the board it is Yatar, but we have some people still somewhat on the fence about it. Everyone sucks here. Your issues with him silently dancing and mouthing the words to songs is just that. Your issues. You need to remember, it's reasonable accommodations, and you're not being reasonable about that. Taking his keys was an a-hole move. Reasonable accommodations don't prevent someone else from doing something. But him letting people into your home without a heads up is an a-hole move too. And his complete disinterest in actually letting you know when a buyer is coming over makes me wonder why you're still living there. Now the story actually has a great collage of further comments from the OP, and some insight into her situation that may make you either no longer pity them or pity them even further. So one person asked, according to your description, it's happening in another room, which you only have to pass through occasionally and briefly. It only affects your senses when you walk through. The rest of the time, he's just working silently in another room, not interfering with your sensorily. But according to the OP, that's not good enough. Do what you want in a place that you technically own or are paying for? How dare you? Again, it's hard to explain, but I can physically sense him moving around in the studio when he's in there, because I know it's what he always does, and so I can't get any peace. It's hard to explain to people without sensory issues, but his dancing around is as jarring to me as a full-on party and concert. It's physically exhausting to me, and I either have to avoid a whole area of the house or end up having anxiety and needing to take downtime for that. So I don't have sensory issues myself. I don't want to assume here, but honestly, it does sound a bit like she's overselling it. I might be wrong though. Now you may ask, well, why doesn't she just live with some other family? Mum, siblings, sister, brother. Well, there's a reason for that too. My parents aren't an option. I was offloaded onto my sister by them, who offloaded me thereafter. Yeah, so, I wonder why. Maybe it was because you were difficult to live with. But no, they do make a good point here with how she wasn't technically always like this, and those experiences no doubt worsened her anxiety and things to the point that it is now. A lot of judgments here, but the thing about disabilities is that they're debilitating. The less support and stability you have, the more your conditions will worsen, and the less independent you can be. It's easy to look at that from the outside and see it as not trying, but sometimes there are insurmountable obstacles. Essentially, I lived with my sister who suddenly gave me an ultimatum to move out. I can't afford my own place in this economy, and I also don't benefit from living alone. But then, the more she talks and explains about her situation, the more you just... I don't know, I was originally being like, okay, I understand where you're coming from, and then she says this, and you're like, I'm sorry, you're actively harmed and unable to function when someone is just dancing and mouthing lyrics? That's... Come on! It sounds like you all think he would be actively harmed or unable to function if he occasionally refrained from dancing. But it's totally normal to not dance in general. It's usually against the rules to dance around on the bus or in your office because those actions can be annoying to everyone around. It's a basic social thing. On the other hand, I'm actively harmed and unable to function while he dances. My health conditions actively suffer, which also prevents my ability to work, since people here seem to think human worth comes down to having a job. I'm not trying to be combative here, but none of this is actually making sense. Now, I can understand the frustration of that idea that your only worth as a human is if you actually have money behind you, but it is true. You need a career to survive in this world. You need a job. You need some sort of work that earns you income, and fact is here, you are actively denying your partner's ability to make income. We need money to survive in this world. You of all people should know that, being someone who literally has nowhere else to go. In regards to their work schedule, someone did ask this and the OP did respond as well. He might work at any random time of the day. I guess it usually would even out to 4 or 5 hours, but it might be up to 8+ hours at certain times, and it's scattered all over the day and night. Morning, afternoon, midnight. I understand how art and inspiration work, so I understand it's more difficult to stick to a rigid schedule. But if I can be flexible, then I imagine he could also be flexible sometimes and postpone work or work calmly without dancing on days where that would immensely help me. So where are you at right now? You still sticking to your original guns where they are the a-hole or they're not the a-hole? I'm curious. It's Give me a timeline of your thoughts as you keep hearing more information from the OP. And once again, they explain themselves more about the fact that they prefer clients never come over to the house, to the place where they can see her partner's work and buy it or not. You know, basically deny him from making money. Something about sensing the presence of a stranger for weeks after they've been there? What, did they not scrub the poo stains from the toilet after they used it when they came over or something? I don't, what? Basically, when I've left the house, I need a lot of rebound time when I get back to what should be the safety of my home. When I suddenly find a person there, I'm unable to unwind from going out, which has a detriment on my health overall, as this makes me less likely to even attempt going out. In general, I can also sense the presence of a stranger for sometimes weeks after they've left. I'm sure many people without sensory issues will say this is impossible, but think about how people who have suffered a home invasion will say they feel creeped out, violated, or unsafe in their house for a long time afterwards. It's exactly that. Again, take those extremities as you will. I will admit I cannot really fathom the legitimacy of this, but I'm also someone who doesn't have these issues, so hard to say it's fair for me to really be judging that aspect of it. But by the way, despite the fact that the boyfriend is providing for her and giving her a place to stay and that kind of stuff, she doesn't seem thankful. She apparently is more of a financial hostage. She's trapped against her will! At this point, I would probably move out, but I'm unable to work currently, which is why I moved in. So it's almost like I'm a financial hostage in this environment. I get that I should try to be more flexible, but we also had many long talks about my needs before I moved in, and it's almost like they never happened. He's not preventing me from working, but I am also unable to get a place on my own. So yeah, that's, again, the pity is draining a bit dry for me personally. I'm struggling to understand why he has to bend over backwards so much for you when he's already given you so much, like a place to stay, doing his best, I suppose, to respect your boundaries on things. But maybe that can be argued. Let me know what you think about that. Now, despite everyone kind of saying, you're the a-hole, she decides to pretend that post didn't exist. No. She just needs to explain herself better. Yeah, that's worked for everyone on this subreddit who's always been called out for being an a-hole. Attempt number 2. Am I the a-hole for needing my home to be safe? I'm 27 female, boyfriend is 28 male. Moved in with him last year, after my sister, who I was living with before, tried to push me into moving out suddenly. I am disabled, have sensory issues, and cannot work, so moving in with my boyfriend was necessary. I also don't do well living alone due to my disabilities. Now, essentially, this entire thing is just a repeat of what she's already talked about. How she doesn't like that he's constantly dancing in this other room, and bringing clients and buyers into the house makes her feel unsafe. Him dancing around the room is physically exhausting, and that she can sense him doing this even if she's not in the room. She feels like she's not getting through to him on these issues. Apparently, he is considerate of her needs in some other areas regarding living together, so he's not being completely ignorant to what she requests. And, you know, just this little brief mention of the fact that she did that a-hole thing earlier. No, but it's just a small thing. Yeah, one sentence. That's all you need. You're fine. Now, you might be wondering, well, what then does she bring to the relationship? Aside from her personal issues and no money. Well, if you've got no experience being a trapeze artist, you are in luck because the bar is low. I contribute emotionally to the relationship and household. My values don't reduce a person to their financial contributions, and so I thought, my boyfriends don't either. I'm gonna be frank. Feel free to disagree, but that's genuinely the lowest form of reciprocation you can give to someone in a relationship. Oh, what makes you valuable as a partner? I'll like you. What? No, she hasn't mentioned anything about maybe she's the one who cleans a lot more often or things like that. Something to balance it out. Just kidding, she says it right here. Again, though, these are things that are like, well, if you owned a house and lived your own life, you'd do these things anyway. But I can understand when you don't have a job, what else can you really do with your time for your partner? We've been dating for a long time. I help him with things around the house when I can and provide him with emotional support in his work and personal life. Don't know about you, but I find that really hard to, believe when so far the only emotional support she's been giving is, frustrations. So then what can she do? How can she escape? Well, unfortunately, she has no choice but to go shopping or to a beach. The poor soul. Oh. Now, she just suggests some ways to work around her issues to him. Feel free to read this if you'd like, or just pause it there for you. And apparently he hasn't been meeting them. It's basically an understandable thing, I'd say. You don't want strangers in the house. You only want them in that studio area, so just bring them around the patio space that's right next to the studio. Yeah, makes sense. I can agree to that. She also asked that he stick to a restricted schedule, which is absolutely perfect for the creative types. That's what makes them work best, when they only get to do it at a specific time of the day. Yep. Again, bringing up the argument that you don't dance at an office or a shop. True, but if your office is a creative workspace, yeah, you're allowed to dance as much as you like. And unfortunately, the lore of this environment builds up even more because we actually get the story from the boy this time. Just about a month later, he jumps on the old subby Reddit and asks if people can see from where he's coming from. Am I the a-hole for telling my dependent girlfriend she's doomed? So myself and girlfriend, both late 20s. She moved in with me last year and is multiply disabled. Her move coincided with financial need on her part. I was able to support her, and I thought I was prepared to accommodate her other needs. I've sometimes needed to depend on others, or some friends have carried me. This made me committed to trying to make it work. It turns out that I fell short many times. A lot of tension grew around her sensory disorders, which made her vulnerable to upset from routine household things. I changed my lifestyle, new furnishings, minimizing sounds and smells, confining my work to one area of the house, restricting visitors and hobbies. Each time, a new issue popped up. Finally, she was agitated by my presence in the house at all, and I began to feel unwelcome. She also required me to help her emotionally and materially. My work suffered. Resentment grew. I gently pressed her to reach out to others for help, which met with resistance as she saw my suggestions as callousness. The rift widened. She became verbally hostile and more withdrawn. My mental health has its own quirks, so this made an impact on me. I've been struggling with guilt and depression. I reached a tipping point after missing work deadlines because it was easier to avoid the house than complete my work at home. I've worked hard to craft a career that brings me fulfillment, and I saw it collapsing. I went home, entered her room, and told her I can't continue. Honestly, tell yourself, tell me as well. Do you blame him for this? He's basically dumping her, this woman who doesn't have anywhere else to go. But it's coming at the cost of his own livelihood, like his life and happiness. I personally don't blame him. Sometimes it's very reasonable to be a selfish a-hole. Well, she lashed out about the ways in which she can't live alone. I opened my mouth. The words that came out are, well, it looks like you're doomed. Oh! Oh! Oh no! Okay, maybe that's not the best thing to say in this circumstance. I went on. If she can't live on her own, can't cope with others, and can't seek out other help, she is doomed, and that's that. I stopped short. The look on her face was of total horror and betrayal. It will haunt me. When I said it, I felt like I'd been walking on eggshells for months, and that she needed to hear reality. Now I'm racked with regret and confusion. I've been staying in a hotel waiting to work out the logistics of living separately. She has refused to speak to me beyond texting that I've caused deep trauma with my statement. I need to know if I actually crossed that line. Please note, I'm not seeking advice on the relationship in general, which is over, but to morally weigh this utterance of mine. The relationship had already caused tensions with friends, and none of them are neutral enough to judge this. An acquaintance suggested I try here. Please give it to me straight. Now, it turns out someone in the comments actually mentioned the noticeable similarities between this story and those previous ones. Boyfriend gives it a read. His response being, wow, I knew she held most of these opinions, but seeing it all written out, this is a lot to take in right now. The emotions were high, and I wanted to give her space to process the breakup, expecting we would talk it through the next day, but so far she's not ready to talk. And honestly, my man, I don't think she ever will be wanting to talk to you about this. I mean, what is she gonna say, aside from just trying to make any way to get you to keep her around? She's clearly not gonna change her ways. She's been through 3 homes. I mean, after being kicked out the first time, you'd think you'd try and do whatever you can to work on yourself and see people who can help you with your situation. Again, I'm not a disabled person. I can't validate just how difficult that kind of thing is. And I don't doubt they have tried, though. Let's sort of assume that they're just being a lazy person, as sadly as much of the story does come across like that. People in the boyfriend story, though, have to say, this is one of those rare breaking points I see here, which makes me say, Natar, you bent over backwards, and she still broke your back. And honestly, I can't find anyone that actually would think otherwise about this. It's very good we got the prior context, though, otherwise I feel like people would be saying Yatar. In regards to the entire compilation of the story, some people have some other thoughts about that too, which I feel like are interesting points to make. Okay, so I'm not saying she doesn't have sensory issues, but what she's describing about sensing him doing stuff across the house, or the presence of other people who left 3 hours ago, sounds less like sensory input and more like obsessing over an idea once she's got it in her head. And that's something that can respond to treatment. I very much wonder if she would sense the customers who had come and gone if she didn't know they had been there, or if she's ever thought her boyfriend was dancing when he was just sitting in the studio. To be clear, if she's obsessing over an idea to the point of making herself unwell, that's still a disability, just not the one she thinks, and maybe one that would be easier to resolve if she sought the right treatment. Some people argue it's a lost cause though. Her situation is so bad she cannot live with another person anymore. Silent mouthing of music in another room? She can't hear that. She can't see it. But she believes she can sense it. Honestly, her partner was on a hiding to nothing. And even if he stopped moving or doing anything, she'd probably still be stressed with her sensing him there. I would hope with appropriate treatment she could get to a place where another person in the house didn't stress her out like this. He's right. If she doesn't get effective treatment, then she's screwed. Because she needs the help of others, but also finds their presence intolerable. Some people calling out interesting dialogue of the woman in this. To all the disabled people who commented about work, I'm truly sorry you have to work while suffering through your pain, and that it's made you lack a compassion for others. Yeah, says the person who lacks compassion for her boyfriend's need to, I don't know, exist. Overall, yeah, tough situation. Not completely like an a-hole father or parent, as much a person just so far deep in their personal issues that it's screwing up their ability to make life better for them. I felt there were some ups and downs with this story though in terms of being the a-hole as much, so let me know what you think. But for now, we'll end everything there. Thank you as always for watching. Surprised this one story ended up taking so long to read, my goodness. Either way, thank you so much for being here and enjoying the time together. My name's been Jack, you are a snack, and I'm smiling back. Yeah, rhymes, haha, I'm so funny. Anyway, I'll see you for the next one. Bye-bye.